Okay, so I got this comment said on my anti-patriarchy, then why push patriarchal norms? This person said, I only can imagine what things would be like if more left-leaning women stood on taking the risk to making changes and articulating what they won't stand for, like you. So many left-leaning women claim to be this way, but fold immediately for I can never say this word, benevolent sexism. I said, if only I could only imagine what life would look like if men actually cared about women and used their power to actually protect kids instead of raping them. Like what? Women are literally in a life and death situation with patriarchy. Don't compliment me in order to throw women under the bus. Even if you think you're saying something nice, this comment makes it sound like I'm not worried for these women. They're still victims under the system and trying to survive. In case it wasn't clear, men have institutional power and women don't. Men found my channel after I made that video and I had to block a lot of them because you're stupid. And I had to block you because you had the audacity to come on my video and think I was taking your side. How foolish of you to think I was taking men as a system side. How foolish of you as a man to think you've deconstructed patriarchy by not understanding that these women are trying to survive in it. You think you're better than these women who are literally getting raped and killed under patriarchy, and men are getting away with it. So again, there is a difference between women being the problem and women being a symptom of patriarchy. Women are never the problem in patriarchy because they're not men. Okay? So women can't be the problem. They can't. Okay? Men have institutional power. Okay? We're talking about laws. Women's reproductive rights are being taken away by these men. So, they're talking about taking away our right to vote, guys. They're talking about taking away our right to vote. And you're sitting here like, oh, women are the problem with patriarchy. Women could never be the problem with patriarchy. Just like black people can never be the problem with white supremacy. Just like gay people can't be the problem with homophobia. No, our oppressors are the problem. Our oppressors are the problem. Look at this. I don't know who this woman is in this pink wig, but she is so, just watch this. Watch her. Love her.
Needs to be like an even level playing field, if that makes sense.
The idea that we've spent the bulk of this conversation discussing how men feel about women not wanting their attention or how men feel about women growing to resist existing in a patriarchy does tell us that even within women's liberation movements, we still have to prioritize men. And that's a problem.
But that's what I'm saying. I feel this idea of like men and women, we're separate. We use that over there, use that. Ultimately, we all want to be together. Like, I think this weird movement of we don't need men, men are this, men are trash, men are that. I don't think that's actually the natural desires of women. Like, you will say men are trash, but
for certain women.
Yeah, but you might say men are trash, but then you still want to be with a man. And to me, that blows my mind.
I think it's possible to acknowledge that men create harm towards women, and it's also at the same time possible to desire partnership with a man who does not create harm in your life.
But if you hate something so much, why be with that thing?
Because two things can be true at once, just like how men are misogynistic towards women, but they still desire the comfort and warmth and love of a woman.
Okay? Now, I don't know who this person is. Saying Sunflower is her name? I don't know. Maybe we disagree a lot, but this point is the point that I like right here, okay? Is that at the end of the day, she is saying two things can be true at once, but this is the most reductive way to think about things, right? Misogynistic men like Myron from Fresh and Fit, a lot of people think he's gay. He's not gay. He's just a misogynist. He's angry. He's straight, if anything, because he has to deal with women because he's sexually attracted to them. God forbid he just, I don't know, goes celibate or something, or lives his best life and doesn't center his life around men. Or women, but he's not gay. He's a misogynist, okay? Like, a lot of people just don't know the difference. You can be gay and a misogynist, but straight men who hate women aren't gay, guys. I don't know why women... So in order for you to believe a man who hates a woman is gay, you would have to believe that you are 100% always desirable, that men should desire women because you exist, instead of remembering that men just hate you for existing, which is different. Like, they just hate you. You know what I mean? So, like, you're doing this thing that doesn't make sense. Now, I think this plays into this conversation here, which is, by the way, this is one of the worst conversations I've ever skipped through in my whole life. I couldn't even watch more than 10 seconds without wanting to die. But this is the modern day debate this is Rachel Wilson versus Not So Erudite Kyla. And this is the part of the Q&A. And just look at this question that this man asks Kyla.
John.
Hi, John. Nice to meet you.
And Kyla's a liberal Christian feminist, and Rachel Wilson is married to Andrew Wilson, who's a misogynist, and that she's a conservative Catholic. Okay, so just for context.
I heard somewhere that the three most influential things, I guess, on the planet are the nuclear bomb, the transistor, and birth control, right? I don't know if that's true, but it sounds right to me. Okay. If you could remove one of those, you can't remove the first two. The third one is something you could do about, and to me, that sounds like that's under feminism. Can you at least acknowledge feminism as at least part of the problem? And if we eliminated that part, would that not help everything?
So feminism is part of the problem and it's part of the solution to a lot of issues, right? Society isn't just like a simple thing, right? Pakistan is a really good example of a country with exploding birth rates. They really solved that issue, but their economy is struggling and they keep on getting dumpstered by India in war, right? Pakistan is a great example of why in a country, lots of things matter all at once. What you're calling contraception, is that like feminism or technology? It's probably a bit of both, right? But what it really is pharmaceutical companies making money from a technology that's utile, right? So the issue is you're pointing at one of the technologies as being like useless and we don't need it. However, I don't even know how we begin to make that argument because we do need women in the workplace, and giving them more control of their family planning has allowed women to massively excel in workplaces and achieve higher levels of education and productive output than ever before.
Hey,
I know
James,
you can't respond, sorry.
just a quick note on that. The reason that Pakistan's economy sucks so bad, even though the birth rate is high, is because they are a Muslim nation with the highest rate of inbreeding in the world.
Oh, I forgot brown people. How did I not think of that?
Are you going to sit here and say that,
Right,
that lowered IQ from inbreeding is not a serious factor in
It's
their
a huge,
economics?
it's a huge issue within Pakistan. The issue is that if your birth rate dream was so awesome, their birth rate is like
Well, you
7.
don't have to
I agree.
marry your cousin.
Well, you
Like,
kind of, sure.
I'm not saying
We do
marry
have
your
to go to the next
cousin.
question.
Rachel, I know disconfirming evidence sucks for you, but you actually
No,
have to
I
deal with
just
it and not
blew
just
you
go,
out.
ma, brown people.
You
have
just
to go to
sat
the
here
next
and said,
question.
well, birth rate is not always
We
so
do
good.
have
It's
to
like,
keep it
no,
moving.
It's like the most unserious conversation in the whole world, which is this whole community. If I'm not mistaken, I think these people have DM'd me before to ask if I wanted to debate people, but like, I would rather stay home with constipation than go on this platform. Okay. Like, people don't understand. To me, this is the most reductive, ridiculous, unserious platform I've ever seen in my life. And this is a huge part of the liberal bubble on the internet that feels like they're doing something when they aren't. Okay. And actually, FD Signifier, someone asked me in chat if I saw that he shouted me out. I did see that. And he makes exactly this point in that video, which is like, you think you're doing the most because you're watching your two favorites go at each other on a debate. You're doing nothing. You're doing nothing. And this is a whole subset of political content on the internet where people really think they're having deep conversations about these topics. You're not even being serious. Okay? Now, Roxane Gay is currently back in the news because she just came out with a book or poems or something. I don't remember. But the point is that I found this old clip from her. Well, it's not that old, but I wanted to go ahead and share this with you because I think it's important. Okay, let me bring it up for you. Just stay with me here on the feminist conversation, okay? Stay with me.
A lot of times people just think feminism is equality. And my mom loves to say, what is that even? Mm-hmm. And she talks about it in the context of marriage because she and my dad have been married for it'll be 50 years this year. And, you know, she was like, there's no such thing as equality in a marriage. Sometimes I did 30% and your father did 70% outside the home. And sometimes that, you know, that was switched around and that's just life. And I think that we have to recognize that same thing in terms of like what we want as feminists, that it's not just about sort of being able to act like men and behave like men. And I'll make those jokes sometimes because they're fun. But are we really like aiming that low? Yeah. And are we really trying to perpetuate the cycles that have oppressed us? Yes. And have given us, you know, like lesser of everything? And I think, you know, which is why Kim Kardashian will show her ass and say things like people don't want to work. You know, if we don't just address all of it at once, so what if we address gender equality while black people don't have any rights? Like then that feminism is absolutely meaningless. And that's why you have to look at the intersections and recognize that fighting for black lives means you are fighting for women because black women are women. And fighting for disability justice is feminism because there are women with disabilities and so on. And so I just think every social justice movement has to be of deep concern to feminism. And it can be exhausting and overwhelming. And a lot of times young feminists will say, but like, that's just so much to take on. Yes. Yes, it is. And that's why you don't do it in one day and you don't do it alone. And you remember that you have to care for yourself as much as you care for others. But to do nothing, I mean, look what nothing has gotten us, and it's nothing good.
And I think this is why Lisa, YV Edit, and Sovereign, and all these women getting up here and talking about feminism. Look, you are a feminist. You're just a school of feminists that is outdated, right? Kyla is a feminist. You can be a Christian feminist. It's just outdated, you know? So When we have these conversations, like TERFs are feminists, they're just transphobic, you know? So like when we have these conversations, we as women as a collective, we're gonna talk about like what is a woman. When we have those conversations about like women coming together, we're talking about this category of the population that has been signed off, ignored, discriminated against by the majority population that is also creating policy to discriminate against us. So a woman is anyone who falls into that category in which policy is impacting our right to doctors, medical care, positions in government, how we work, you know, how the draft works. Like, what is a woman? I guess under modern policy, anyone not drafted, which, by the way, we should abolish the draft. I had some man come into my chat saying, Brittany, I love the way you're fighting for women's equality, but would you fight for the equality of them joining the draft? You're so fucking stupid. Like, you're so fucking ignorant. Nobody should be drafted. That's what I'm saying. These people are so reductive in their thinking. Why in the world would I be in favor of the draft? Nobody should be drafted. How dare you hate boys and men so much that you would want them to be drafted into unnecessary wars? Every war is unnecessary. So it's very frustrating for me as a person who is trying to prove a point that I think is actually being proved by these people leaving stupid comments in my chat and who have to get blocked. Because again, I don't think anyone should be drafted because nobody should be fighting wars. So the fact that they're like, would you advocate for women to be drafted? I wouldn't advocate for you to get drafted. And by the way, I made this a point in my video because people were like, they were trying to make some point of shouldn't, like, it was a stupid point. Like, they were nice about it. We eventually came to a point, I don't know. I don't know where they ended up because I stopped talking to them in that chat. But basically it was like, shouldn't we give some social credit to people who support like, or help liberate enslaved people? It's like, no. And what you're asking is, shouldn't I get social credit for doing the bare minimum? No. No, and the bare minimum would be not being racist or not being homophobic. Like, no credit. These straight biphobic women who are like, I love gay people, I support you, I just want to date bi men. Yeah, no gold star. You're just biphobic. Okay? Now, speaking of what is a woman, I got this comment that says, hi, Brittany, I'm new to your community, but I love the content you put out. And I've watched a bunch of your videos now. And it's made me ask a bunch of questions I've never thought about. A lot of bubble pops. So thank you. You're welcome. You said, I've been thinking about, as I've heard you say, preferences are for food, not people, regarding dating and partners. That is something I've always implicitly believed growing up, especially because I've never really had a type. I'm queer, by the way. And I have gone back and forth from bi, pan to lesbianism and demisexual to just queer, different phases of only women because I don't think a man could deeply emotionally connect to me, and trying to deconstruct gender entirely, leading to my question, if we all do the work to deconstruct our view of gender and race, is the end result pansexuality, of loving people simply for who they are rather than the body they were born into? I don't think this is to be construed in a homophobic sort of way. I don't want to imply that your sexuality is a choice, but I'm curious if this made sense and what your thoughts are. So is sexual orientation a choice? Again, I think the dilemma here is like we're having multiple conversations with multiple words. Deconstruction does not only mean like the way you think it means when you talk about like leaving Christianity, like I deconstructed away from Christianity and realized it wasn't real. When we say gender is a construct, we're not saying it's not real. When we say I'm a gender deconstructionist and I think gender is a performance rather than something inherently biological, we're not also saying that it is inherently biological because everything is biological. We're saying different people, 8 billion people on the planet are having different experiences, and those different experiences allow them to use different labels to explain their life. Have you ever had someone tell you they have aphantasia and then half the population is like, that's impossible? Or people are like, oh, I have an inner monologue. And someone's like, no, we are all having different biological experiences because our brains don't even work the same. And then on top of that, if our brains don't even work the same, how would we even be able to talk about attraction the same way? How would we even be able to talk about preferences the same way? Most of the time, preferences are saying, I like all of them, but I prefer one or the other. Or, you know, I started saying preferences are for fruit, not people, as a reductive way of saying, think deeper, not as a literal way of saying, you know. So I think the way I would answer this question is not that after deconstruction we would all be pansexual, but rather after deconstruction or during, we just realize we could be, we are either lesbians or gay men or women or whatever, or we're not. And we're many things, or maybe it's fluid, or maybe it changes. So no, pansexuality is not the goal at the end of the rainbow of deconstruction. It could be the result for some people, but not all people. Sometimes your deconstruction leads you right back into lesbianism. Like, deconstruction is to take apart and learn the details of. It has multiple meanings depending on the bubble, right? So again, it depends on which bubble you're using the word, how you're using the word, and the conversations we're having about it. Do I think most of the population, like, I don't think we know, you know how people say like trans people are 1% of the population? Okay, we don't know that. We do not know. There is no data good enough to ever come to that conclusion. It is more likely like 40 to 50 to 60%. It is much, because even cis being the default is such bullshit. Since cis doesn't even really exist because it's just simply the concept of being assigned at birth. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like, the concept, all of society is built off this very gendered binary, which exists for some individuals' experience. But the fact that we've told all of human beings there's a default mode of being a person, why do we know? How could we ever know that? Like, why would you ever come to that consensus? Well, it's always about power and dominance. That's what they're looking for. So if you fit into this group, now you're the normal one. If you fit into this group, you're the default mode. And therefore you're smarter, better, more capable, so on and so forth. So look at some of these TikToks, okay? Around, and by the way, this is how feminism gets played into things. So men go inherently, we're born men, which means we're born natural leaders. We're born natural protectors. And so if we're natural protectors, you must be our natural prey or natural less than, so we must protect you. And this goes into the expectation of your then gender being played out a particular way. Or your children, like before you even have a child or bring it into the world, we already have gender reveal parties, right? So like that plays into capitalism, and then capitalism goes, oh, we can sell people all of these unnecessary things for their gender reveal parties. And then that plays into all of these structures of oppression. And then it's like, okay, so again, right? Okay, now look at this. Sick of hearing sexuality is a choice. So we'll talk about that in a second.
I will never understand why people sit there and say that your sexuality is a choice, because why the fuck would I choose to make my life harder? Being a lesbian is hard fucking work. It's hard work. I'm struggling out here, all right? Dating life, hard work. Men approaching you, hard work. It's all hard work. So no one picked their sexuality. Queer people don't pick, all right? Sexuality is not a choice, because why would we put ourselves in a box that everyone can just take the mick out of? So, yeah, that's all I've got to say. It's a heavy day today.
Guys, I would choose to be gay every time. I would choose to be trans every time. I would choose to be queer every time. Every single time. Anytime in history, I would choose to be this. Every single time, I would be this. This body, this expression, this person. Just like when I see black people say, I'd be black every time, that's what that's saying. I would be me every time. I will not let the world shame me from it. So the idea that we're supposed to sit here and say like, oh, I wouldn't have wanted to be queer this time around. No, every time around. I would choose it. I'm not choosing to be oppressed. You're oppressing me. I'm not choosing to be oppressed. I'm choosing to exist as I am, as I was supposed to be. I am not choosing my oppression. You wanting to be black in the next life is not you choosing oppression. It's not, that's not what you're choosing. The fact that white people are oppressing you, that's not the same thing. Are you saying that you'd want to come back as a different ethnicity so you weren't oppressed? Because that's what you're asking of gay people. And I'm saying, no, we should want to come back the way we are every time. If it's something like being gay or your skin color or something else, like why should I want to come back a different version of myself? No. So it sounds good, right? It sounds like really good logic. But this is why I say when you think deeper about these topics, it's not just, oh, I wouldn't choose to be a lesbian. Why would I choose to be oppressed? It's like a fun, superficial way of like when straight girls say like, why would I choose to be attracted to men? It's like, haha, teehee, funny. But seriously though, what does that even mean to say, oh, this next time around I choose to be somebody else? Like, what does it even mean? Right? Chat says, rephrase, not would you choose to be gay, but would you choose to be harmed is what I'm saying. But that's not what people are saying. That's what they think they're saying. But that's how you're giving into the oppressor. And I'm saying we are all born free. I'm saying you have to be careful the way you think you're making liberatory statements, but it's not a liberatory statement. It's actually proving that to heterosexuals, you shouldn't want to be gay because look how hard your life is. That's exactly the narrative you hear from conservatives, like gay people have a harder life, they're more prone to disease and homelessness. Look, that's why you know being trans is wrong, because they're more likely to be homeless. The rates of suicide are so much higher. That instead of saying, oh, maybe they're trying to kill themselves because they have to live on the planet with bigots. right? Your kid wanting to be trans every time is valid, okay? And then past that, what is even being trans in the first place, right? So I'm saying like, it's an interesting idea, but also I don't think it really allows us to move past, because if we're always living in like survival or relationship to the oppressor, how are we going to problem solve for a future we're aiming towards? You know, like it's like kind of like when you're learning to save money or get out of debt. You can't get out of debt and be worth $6 million and then still worry about whether or not the tomato paste is on sale. But if you're living with like a fear of whether or not the tomato paste is on sale, like you haven't unlearned or actually liberated yourself. And I know because I watch all these finance shows, and you'll have these people who are so fucking rich and they're still worried about like couponing and getting the dollar menu at Burger King or whatever. And it's like, okay, at some point you can't live like that. That's not actually how you should be living, but they're trapped. They're trapped in this cycle of trauma, right? Okay, look at this video.
Who thinks homosexuality is a choice is someone who made the choice to be straight. They,
wow,
I think, were at a crossroads and they chose straight, and that's why they think it's a choice. You are gay or you are straight or you are bi.
Yeah,
and if
yeah.
you think it's a choice, it's because you made a choice
Yes.
privately. Whoa.
I really love this video because a family member once asked me, how do you know you're gay if you haven't been with a woman? And I responded with, how do you know you're straight if you haven't been with a guy? Straight people don't need to experiment to know, and gay people don't either. Being gay is not a choice. Because if it was, so many of us would not be spending years of our lives trying not to be.
Anyone who
Yeah, I think, listen, I don't know a time in my life when I didn't know I was into girls. Like, I knew I was into girls as a child, so I don't know what it's like to go your whole life thinking you're straight. I knew from the moment I could have a thought that I was gay. I just didn't know what it meant for my life. And what I was trying to figure out as a kid is like, should I stay alive? Should I kill myself? Is there a place for me in the world? That's what I was trying to figure out. And I know some people figure out they're lesbians at 40, and I'm here for it, girls. I didn't. I knew when I was a kid. Like, I just knew when I was a kid, I'm attracted to girls. I just don't know what that means. Because as a kid, it wasn't like I was always attracted to like the sex element. Obviously, it was just like I want to hold hands with her and I want to hang out with her. And like when of my Barbies are together, like my girl Barbies in our house together, like it was like there was a boy Barbie too, but like, you know what I mean? Like, this is Barbie's house, okay? And there was that part of it that I was like, oh yeah, this sounds nice. When I used to watch Sailor Moon, I'm like, girl gang, like that's my vibe right there. And also, you know, I'm also as I got older, I realized that I just like people for people, who they are. And that took a long time to realize. Again, labels are for other people. They're hardly for even us, right? So when we have these conversations, I want us to give an option to the 8 billion people on earth all having a different relationship. Like, guys, there's probably like 8 million different ways to be gay. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're doing this reductive thing that like gay is gay and bi is bi and this is this. Yes, to some bubbles, absolutely. And also, right? And also, okay? So we have to eradicate our definitions away from bigotry and ask what are our definitions in a liberatory sense. So if straight women are saying bisexual men are actually just gay men, that's oppressive. If lesbians are saying bi girls are actually just straight women, that's oppressive. If we're saying, oh, bisexuality looks all different ways and has all different frameworks, that's liberatory, because now we're giving people options. You know? Okay, next video. Why can't it be a choice? Now, this one is a little interesting because it's about asexuality.
Asexuality is not a choice in the same way that being gay, bi, or lesbian is not a choice. If it were a choice, that would insinuate that we can just turn it on or off at will, which we can't do. And I think people who have this misconception just have a wrong definition of what asexuality actually is. Asexuality is when a person experiences little to no sexual attraction towards others. It has nothing to do with whether or not they have sex, which is a choice. Someone who chooses not to have sex is celibate. Someone who chooses not to have sex until they found the right person is abstinent. Both of these are choices that people can make or not make. But being asexual is not a choice because we can't control whether or not we experience sexual attraction. It's just something that happens or it doesn't. I hope this was helpful, and if you have any other questions,
I want to encourage people to think of it as like discovering something about yourself, discovering something about the way the world treats you. You know, a lot of us came into feminism because we discovered something about the way the world worked. A lot of us found our way into different definitions of sexual expression or gender or whatever else because we discovered something about ourselves. And the discovery is the exciting part. And that's sort of like my life's journey, is to discover what's true and to discover how life can be experienced and in which ways could we liberate ourselves. You know, I used to think liberation was like, the height of liberation was like realizing you could have sex with your friends and it would be consensual and chill and informed. Yes, that's true. That's really great. But also there's so much more even past that. Or we in media, they show like sexual liberation, like handcuffs and whips and chains and all that, which yeah, love that. But like amazing. But also like that's just the beginning. Like I don't know how to tell you guys that every time you have a bubble pop and you realize like, oh my God, I didn't know this was an option. Oh, wait till I tell you about the 8 million other options. But then what I think happens is what is it called? Choice paralyzation, where you know how the iPhone only has like so many colors available because too many choices makes people not want to buy the phone because it's too intense. I think that's what happens. Where people go, oh, that's too much. I don't want to handle it. And I went through stages like that too, where I got really overwhelmed with the amount of options. I was like, oh, I just want this option. But now I go, I love that. I'm not interested, you know? Thank you for that option. I'm not interested. I said this to a friend the other day. I said, because I told her we plan to maybe go on vacation or maybe we're going to go out. And they were like, oh, where are you guys going? I was like, oh, it's probably going to be a staycation type thing. And they were like, oh, well, you I said something like, I'm not much of a travel girly. And they're like, well, you could be. And I was like, no, thank you. It's always the reaction. Always the reaction to me saying I'm not something is you could be. I'm like, I'm good. Now, the difference is that I've tried it. The difference is that I did try to travel because I wanted to be a travel girly. And I realized, oh, I hate this. Are people having this experience when they travel? Because I absolutely hate it. And then I realized I didn't want it versus never trying it, which is fine. Some people know themselves well enough. I'm not that girl. Remember that I'm not the girl who isn't the try person. I never know myself well enough until I try things. So that's the other part of sexual orientation. For some people, they never have to try it. And for other people, they got to touch the stove. So if you're the touch the stove kind of person, know that about yourself. That's me. I got to try it. Most of the time, I got to try it. Okay. Some people are not that way, and that also is valid. It is just as valid for that to be the choice. I would never tell my gay brother, like, you should sleep with a woman to make sure. He knows, girl. He doesn't need to. But me, I was like, we should have sex just so I can check. And like, that's everyone's different, but they're both equally valid. They shouldn't be pushing the other to be one. I shouldn't be pushing my brother to have sex with women, and he shouldn't be pushing me to not have sex with anyone. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we should be encouraging each other to use whatever method is good for us as individuals to discover who we are. Okay. Let's see. Chess says, are we allowed to take bits from different types to create your own hybrid that encompasses your own personal values? Wait, is that a question for me? About values? I mean, always. I think we should be learning from each other. Is that what you're asking? I think we should be learning for each other. Like, we should all be giving each other information to figure out what works for us. That's why when we watched that conservative lady the other day, I was like, but here, what is she saying? How can we learn from this? And some people in chat were just like, I don't like her, Brittany. I hear you. But if I only watch people I liked all the way, I would never watch most people, right? Like, the world is full of 8 billion people and most of them are bigoted. You're going to have to watch people you don't like. You don't have to watch people you don't like every day, all day. But on occasion to bubble hop, that's what that is. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a line. I don't need you to be like a conservative who's like, I have friends of all different views. No, they don't. Conservatives do not have diverse friend groups because they wouldn't actually be able to be open and honest and transparent about their thoughts and not feel constantly attacked. They do not have diverse friend groups, okay? I'm not saying have diverse friend groups. I'm saying as a student, study other bubbles. I'm not saying be friends. I'm not saying hang out. I'm not saying invite to your home. I'm not saying tolerate. I'm saying as a student, hop into the bubble, put on your little glasses and go, okay. And they'd be like, okay, bye, thank you. And then leave. Okay. Because there is something to be learned. You don't have to throw your whole identity back into the bubble just because. And I think that's the problem people have. Like, it's like when I start reading the Bible and people are like, oh my God, are you coming back to the church? I'm like, I'm going to burn this book right in front of you. Don't piss me off. You ruin the excitement for learning. If I open up the Quran, I don't expect people to assume I'm going to be a Muslim. Okay? Like, I just want to learn. How am I supposed to learn about other cultures if we don't read about other cultures? Do you know what I'm saying? But I know some people naturally they just start becoming that bubble. They're in the bubble so long, they become the bubble, which I get it. Me too. If I stay anywhere long enough, you know what I'm saying? Okay. Speaking of Muslims, here's a queer Muslim who makes queer content for Muslim people.
It's not a choice. Being gay is not a choice. Being lesbian, bisexual, transgender, it's not a choice. Choosing to remain ignorant is. Rhetoric, calling it a choice, is so damaging because it results in a lot of people in our community going towards really harmful practices in order to become straight. Conversion therapy, something that we don't hear a lot about, but it does happen. You cannot flick a switch and be straight. That's not how it works. You are a beautiful human being put on this planet for a purpose, not to harm yourself, to fit into a box that wasn't made for you. Learn to find peace and acceptance within yourself. Whatever stage of life you're in, however old or young you may be, it's never too late or too early to find that peace. It's not a choice. It never was. You're someone within our community who might be straight and a bit ignorant. Educate yourself. If you're gay, accept yourself. Being gay is not a choice. Being lesbian, bisexual.
Okay, hold on. Let me just hold on. You said I'm trying not to cherry pick things. It just seems to find things from multiple outlets that really fit. That's not how you use that word. You said I see pros and cons to one ideology and I see pros and cons or pros of another that seem to combat the cons of the other. So I tend to mix what pros and cons fit my core values. Guys, when you cherry pick stuff in a conversation or in a statistic, you already have a bias that you're trying to prove. So you cherry pick the information to prove the bias. You're not doing that. I assume you're making up your values from scratch because you don't assign to a script bubble, right? Like you weren't born like religious or something. When you're born Catholic, they give you the 10 Commandments and the Catholic teachings. When you're born a Muslim, they give you the Quran. You know what I'm saying? You get the Torah when you're Jewish. Like if you are starting from scratch about your values, you have to pick and choose what makes sense for you because you're building it from scratch, right? And then on top of that, these religions also did that too. They've just been around long enough that you think somehow they're ancient or natural. How do you think they came up with their 10 Commandments? You know what I mean? They were like, ooh, add this one in. Make this number 3. Make this number 3. No. Make it number 1. Make it number 1. Oh, yeah. Like, so don't look at these people like they're not just you in a group. That's all it is. It's just like they've been around a long time. They put together the little dogmas and they have a bunch of fans, and that makes it seem old and ancient and secure and important, but it's no different than you as an individual curating your own values. Okay? So like don't sell yourself short is what I'm saying. The cool thing about values too is it changes. You update them. You go back and review them. You come up with different definitions. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Now, let me show you this. Okay, look at this. Did you guys see this? Again, when we talk about, okay, so let's go back to this. Let's go back. It says, okay, so if we all do the work to deconstruct our gender and race, is the end result of pansexuality? Okay, so let me show you this. So again, feminism is response to patriarchy. Okay, it's in response to patriarchy. Okay, patriarchy is like, isn't there something wrong with feminism? Yeah, the fact that it needed to exist in the first place because of patriarchy. That's the only thing wrong with feminism, is that it even had to begin in the first place because y'all won't give women rights. Because you would rather subject them, enslave them, keep them as baby makers, because you're disgusting human beings as an individual and a structure. Not because you're a man, but because you deliberately benefit and reap the benefits of patriarchy while throwing women under the bus with every time you open your mouth. Again, if men were truly deconstructed from patriarchy, they would 100% understand why feminism exists. And they would always support their feminist sisters, but they would also understand that eventually we wouldn't have to do this if a majority of men weren't constantly entitled to women's bodies. Okay? Same thing about gender expression and where it comes from. Guys, we are impacted by patriarchy, racism, white supremacy. Capitalism impacts our gender. So when you're a person, okay, you're given a script by your family. Okay, let's say you have 2 parents and they hand you a script and then you take it and you read it and you're like, oh, this is interesting. But some of these things don't apply to me. So you start to pull apart the script. You start to see the details of this script you were given. And you're like, ooh, actually, I don't like this part and I don't really like this part. And honestly, I don't think this part's very healthy. So then what you have to do is you have to transform this into a different script that has an updated version of the information. It's updated now with all the new science and information because your parents aren't going to update because they just became stagnant. And then you're going to have a kid, or younger people are going to see your script and go, oh, cool, let me take it apart and look at it and read it. Okay. Now, again, they don't always deconstruct it. Sometimes they're born, they see the script and they're like, thanks, this is perfect. I'm not going to change anything about it. But then this kid is like, actually, wait, these parts are bad. We got to kind of get rid of this and we got to update it again. And then we get the updated version. Okay. It's kind of like with anything in life, you got to update the software. Or you can still be using old software if you want, but the old software is only going to get you so far. And there seems to be an obsessed group of people that really romanticize the old software and they don't want to update. And I'm saying, just update, girl. Your life will literally be easier, you know? And some people don't. So if you're doing this as an individual, because it is an individual journey, then eventually you can find a community of people who are also working on the same thing. And then you guys together can start forming new scripts and new scripts and new scripts. But the idea is like, there's 8 billion people on the planet. Girls, I know you cannot conceptualize this because nobody can. 8 billion of you figuring it out, trying to come to a consensus, trying to realize things about themselves. Like every journey you've gone on, every baby's gonna have to go through the same amount of stress and annoyance and war and news and everything over and over again, 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 over. And for the rest of the world, there will be people like me who go, hey, let's find new ways to talk about this. And there will be people who go, hey, let's talk about this the same way we've been talking about it. And there will be people who say, we have to go back to the past. The past is the best. And there will be people who are like, we have to look forward to the future. And then there will be like suggestions on how to do that. My suggestion when you think of deconstruction is to honor the word for the bubble that it exists in. If you're coming from a Christian bubble and you say, I deconstructed from Christianity, it usually means to leave behind, to take apart, to have the realization it was false. If you're in a philosophy bubble, deconstruction is a little bit different, right? It's about words and nuances and how they play into the multiple levels of understanding. And then you can talk about deconstruction from a take apart and understand the details of, which is a little bit different. So it depends. You have to deep dive into these bubbles. Like before I was starting out here, I was reading about deconstruction and I was reading about feminism and deconstruction and why they're often at odds. And I was philosophical deconstruction. And then I was like, and not philosophical like the verb, philosophical like the philosophy of deconstruction. And then feminism, and I was reading, guys, it takes hours, days, months, years to read all of this information. And I'm telling you right now, unless it is your special interest, what you really want is a simple way for me to guide you into a direction where your life gets better all of a sudden. I can't do that. I actually can't do that. Instead, I will just say to you, life is hard, but it is manageable. It is very helpful if you can learn to suffer wisely. And it's even more helpful if you realize there's no end goal. There is no such thing as an ending goal to an ever adapting world. The short-term goals, which short-term meaning the next 500 to 1,000 years, will be something like liberating marginalized people, making sure culturally speaking, we move away from bigotry, understanding the nuances of, I mean, just starting off today's stream and talking about that abhorrent video that Chelsea Fagan put out about neurodivergency. It was so ignorant, so lacking in research. Hank Green admitting to using ChatGPT for scripts. Like, you know, we live in a world where even the people we're supposed to trust, like even the people who are on the left, like not leftist, they're not leftists, but the people who are liberals, they don't know either because they're not studying, they're not researching, they're just reacting. And I'm saying stop just reacting and start pausing, meditating, educating, and then coming up with, here's what I've researched, here's what I think, okay? And I say this like respectfully as somebody who, you know, I had to learn how to do this. We all have to learn how to do this because it is exhausting. When people think I script my videos, I get a little annoyed because I'm not scripting my videos. I'm researching, reading, and then creating a video. But I'm not an educational YouTuber in that traditional sense, so I get it. And also, right? Discourse that I do love that your definition of short term is 300 years, the same of my definition, recent 200 years. I mean, it's really not that long if you think about it. That's what's so crazy about the world. It's really not that long ago. I mean, you know how people always reference Christopher Columbus? It's not like he was alive in the last 50 years. We're always referencing recent history as the last 500 years, even like talking about philosophers, Greek philosophers, you know, they were around a really long time ago, right? But we talk about them like they were recent or something. So recent relative, right? Now look at this. So this is a video I want to show you. Every time someone says like, oh, gay people are running everything, they're so prevalent, they have so many rights, they you know, look at this.
I couldn't be gay in India.
He ran away.
It was illegal.
I mean,
to be gay.
Of course.
Like, and I wanted to find myself.
Sure.
Indian gay dads Amit and Aditya are going viral. Amit was born in America, while Aditya was born and raised in India.
I think our love feels raw because it's like not the cookie cutter, like perfect story.
Upon moving to America, Aditya and Amit met through a mutual friend. When they started dating, they were both figuring out their sexualities, and neither of their parents knew they were gay.
South Asian culture, you just like, you mentally tune into the fact that you'll grow up, you marry a woman, have kids, house, car, all that, right?
After Amit came out to his parents and they had been dating for a while, the two decided to tie the knot.
His parents knew, mine didn't. So we got married with our friends, but we didn't tell either of our parents. We were like, when they will know, they'll know together.
Aditya ended up telling his parents, who were supportive.
They were super chill, like, and then they were introduced, and the parents, like, the WhatsApp chat was like booming, and
Blowing
they were like,
up.
you have to buy a house and you have to get married in the Indian way. I was like, sure.
The couple ended up having a traditional Indian wedding with all their family, and the pictures went viral. In 2023, the two announced they had a baby girl on the way via surrogacy. And in May of that year, their daughter arrived.
Adi and I are finally dads.
We have a daughter now.
Now the two document their lives as gay dads, raising their now 3-year-old daughter. They have blown up on social media, showing their rainbow family and embracing their culture. Aditya is also breaking down barriers through his social media, building a successful career for himself as a makeup guru.
I couldn't be gay.
So I knew who they were because I had seen like come into our home video about them, and then I saw them on Pink News. And I will say that I want to remind you of how much representation matters, and then how much we still have to talk about it, because people think like, oh, gay people are so free, gay people can be everywhere, but they're not, you know, and their story is connected to the story around straight women not wanting to date by men. So let me whiplash you into something negative.
And the problem with the bisexual discourse is that y'all think that y'all can debate people into changing what they're attracted to. The internet isn't real life, and you can't debate, shame, or guilt women into dating bisexual men. And for all of y'all saying, oh, we're not forcing y'all to do anything, we just want you to unpack and ask yourself why. What does unpacking look like to y'all? Because I've thought about it, I've seen all the takes, I've read all the comments, and nothing anyone says is going to make me want a bisexual man. Like,
pause. Have we thought about reading books? Have we thought about watching documentaries? Have we thought of not just watching TikTokers give their opinions, but academics, research, the history of gay oppression, the history of the intersection between Black bisexual men and their oppression? Have we thought about researching, like, again, watching all the TikToks about your take is not enough. That's like a conservative saying, oh, I've watched all the takes about gay people, I'm so homophobic. It's like, okay, but why? Like, again, we're not saying you have to date a bi man, but that's what they keep hearing. And the same way that straight, like, homophobic people are like, are you saying I have to accept gay people? I'm saying, why aren't you accepting gay people? Like, what is your reasoning? Again, people don't understand the difference between why you're doing something and you have to do it. No one is saying you have to do anything. I'm saying, why aren't you doing it? Do you know why?
literally nothing. And I've realized at this point that unpack is really code for change your mind. Because see, y'all are sitting in comment sections talking about, I haven't seen one good reason. Give me one good reason. That's weird. A woman not wanting to date a man for any reason is reason enough, whether or not it's rooted in homophobia. And I can't for the life of me imagine.
Okay, so yes, in terms of consent, any reason you don't want to date somebody is valid consent-wise. Past consent, and then when we talk about bigotry, which is a different intersection, it's not okay. You cannot date a man because you just don't feel like it today, because his socks were a funny color, because of whatever. I don't care. That's consent. What does consent have to do with bigotry? Because you cannot sit here and say, well, I don't want to date this man because insert characteristic here, and then say, but it's just because of nothing. No, there's a something. What is the something? that's keeping you from dating a certain kind of man. And by the way, when I talk about bisexual men, I'm thinking about queer bisexual men, which, by the way, I was telling one of my friends this, okay? I was talking to them, and they're in very queer circles. Like, everybody's queer. Everybody's like, well, not everybody. There are straight people, but they're very cool straight people. And I was trying to explain to them this discourse, and they were like, I'm confused. I was like, listen, and they're all high earners. They own homes. They're all educated, but they've been so free from the bubbles for so long that they're like, are you guys okay? And I was like, no, they're not okay. And that's the other part is like, let's be honest, this is just conservatism. Like, this is a version of conservative script that has been given to people over the years. And you can't, that's why you can be a conservative feminist. It's why you can be a feminist that's reductive. Because again, women's consent is first and foremost, 100%. Anyone's consent is first and foremost. And then you have to unpack everything after the consent part, right? These are two separate things.
A woman not wanting to date a straight man for any reason, and people telling her, well, why don't you want to date him? Give me one good reason you don't want to date that man. You have to give me a good reason that's not rooted in X, Y, and Z. That's insane. And this is
well, that's just not the question. And that's not the premise. And that's why I'm saying I love people, but people are the reason the world is the way that it is. Every form of bigotry, every form of hate, every form of discrimination, it comes because you guys aren't doing the work. All of us aren't doing the work. Conservatives just aren't doing the work. Guys, they're not just like uniquely hateful people. They're not thinking. You're not reading books. You're not doing the work. You're watching TikToks instead of actually doing research. Like, you're not really learning. And so that's why I say to you, like, I don't care what you call yourself. You will become a conservative if you do not keep deconstructing, if you don't keep learning. And so again, like, you can, like, it doesn't matter. That's why I say the way sometimes people talk about conservatives, like, they're not uniquely evil. There's nothing about them that's unique. They're just uneducated. You know what I mean? And when you're uneducated, you typically are bigoted because bigotry is rooted in an unknown. They don't know. They don't just uniquely hate gay people. They don't even understand it. And when you know what I mean? It's scary when you don't understand something.
Pattern within the LGBTQ community, the obsession that they have with wanting to have sexual access to heterosexual people. Their logic is you have to date them or you.
This is disgusting. This is super fucked up to say the queer community is in any way giving this argumentation when that's not even the argumentation they're giving. Okay? This is what we're saying. Okay? We're saying a lot of things, but we are not saying that.
As a bisexual man, I'm not offended that straight women don't want to date me because they're homophobic. Because I don't want to date them either. I want to date queer people. So straight men, straight women, y'all can have each other. Because that sounds miserable. Yuck.
Like, you sound miserable. Now, make it clear to you that I date queer. But I've dated straight before. But they were kind of like hippie straight. So to be fair, they were kind of different anyways. But I find for myself, I want to date philosophically queer. And that is a values difference. It's not about sexual orientation because you could be straight and be queer in the sense that you could be a trans man, trans woman, trans person. There's a lot of ways to become queer, but I'm not interested in, like, if you want to do straight for straight, you can do that. But the irony of people realizing they're lesbians at 40, I'm just saying, like, some people know they're straight, some people don't, some people are gay. But if the love of your life, if you're married to someone for 40 years and then they realize they're bisexual, like, is that really going to change anything? Because these women are acting like if their husbands realize 30 years from now they're bisexual, but they don't want to, doesn't mean anything. They just want to share with you and confide in you. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to be like, oh, we have to get divorced now? Why? You were together 40 years. Like, why would you have to get divorced now? People discover all kinds of things about themselves later in life because we live in such an oppressive world. We haven't even been able to think of, what if we are bisexual? Again, the point of deconstruction is not to come to any particular conclusion. It's to realize and unlearn and pull apart and understand in detail who we are. Like I said, you could start off a lesbian and deconstruct and end up bisexual. You could be a lesbian who deconstructs and just ends up a lesbian. Because for some people, their default self is a lesbian. Okay? Not that there is a default setting, but you are lesbian if you're a lesbian. You are gay if you're gay. You're bi if you're bi. You're blah, blah, blah. But for a lot of people, and probably a lot more people than we're willing to even talk about, the experience is a little bit more fluid. But it doesn't mean that one is better than the other. Okay. So when we have these conversations, people are missing the intersection of how important it is when we talk about discrimination. So this woman saying like the gay people like want you, they're forcing you to be with them. That is not what we're saying. That's the last thing we're saying. That's what heterosexuals have been saying this whole time. No, it's men who find out you're a lesbian who start trying to get you to sleep with them that are exactly this. Gay, bisexual men, queer people should not be doing this. If they're doing it, they're mimicking straight culture. Straight culture is the one that forces gay boys to go to strip clubs in order to introduce women into their lives, or mothers put their sons in positions of dating girls in the neighborhood so they can, quote, be straight again. Like, if gay people are doing that, they need to deconstruct that culture they grew up in or something, because that is not what we're doing. So for her to say that is ridiculous.
Hate them. And you have to date them to prove that you don't hate them. And see, a lot of them are trying to compare this to things like race, but it's the exact same thing, because if someone says they don't want to date outside their race, whether or not it's rooted in racism, that person is still going to continue dating within their race. If someone says they don't want to date a black woman, I'm not about to ask them to give me a reason why or to unpack why they don't want to date a black woman. I'm going to keep it pushing. Everybody isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea, and you just have to accept that no matter what it's rooted in.
So this is anti-liberation politics. This is anti-liberation. She is not a liberatory person. She does not want to liberate her people, whoever her people are. She does not want to liberate them. Because that's what that is. Because the idea of us pushing back is to help liberate everybody. Roxane Gay says it the best, though. Let me let her say it.
When I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade and HIV/AIDS began to ravage the gay community in the United States, a narrative emerged that Haiti was the origin of epidemics and a hotbed of disease, an island plagued. My brothers and I were classified by our peers as high risk by nature of our ethnicity. Kids would ask us if we had AIDS and if we were going to die. They worried that they were going to catch whatever diseases we were carrying by being overly proximal. It was childish ignorance fueled by something much more sinister, misinformation and bigotry that they were learning from adults. Throughout the years, there were other Haitian-related taunts about HBO, which is just too infantile to explain, and about the age-old tale of Haiti's extreme poverty and people eating mud cakes. The way people understood and weaponized Haitian identity was hurtful, and then it was annoying, and then we mostly became accustomed to the various stigmas, factoring it in as the cost of freedom. Little has changed between then and now. Every 5 years or so, there is some renewed effort to lodge ridiculous, deeply racist and xenophobic accusations against Haitian people. It feels disproportionate, given that there are probably only around 16 million Haitians on the island and across the diaspora. But it's important to consider our history. In 1791, Haitians successfully rebelled against the French colonizers, sparking a resistance that would lead to the country being the first free black nation in the Western Hemisphere. In the ensuing 232 years and change, the rest of the world has seemed hell-bent on making Haiti pay for fear of global black liberation. There was the indemnity France demanded from Haiti to recognize its independence, one that required most of Haiti's wealth to go toward repaying the debt for 122 years. The island's poverty is not accidental. It can be traced directly to the reparations exacted by the French. So affronted were they that Haitians were not interested in being enslaved.
What I take from this 2-minute clip is that exact intersection between saying, you know, biphobia and all this stuff. You can't force people to date who they want. No one's forcing you to date anybody. We're saying, look how the AIDS epidemic put Roxane and her siblings in a position of being accused by children on the playground of having AIDS because they were Haitian, and how that impacts our communities. And now here's straight women on the internet saying that bisexual men have AIDS in 2026. And children will be the biggest victim of this situation. Gay kids who kill themselves, bi men who kill themselves, you know, lesbians who kill themselves, all of us who kill ourselves are bullied on the playground because you are not educating yourself and then saying, I don't have to because you will not force me to not be bigoted. And I'm saying, why the double down? Well, you know, we sit here and ask, how did Trump get elected? And this is why I do go after people who are anti-Trump the most sometimes, because you think you have the higher ground being anti-Trump as if that's enough. As if men aren't right now doing the whole, we apologize for supporting Trump thing, as if Theo Vaughn and all these comedians aren't all of a sudden anti-Trump, right? Like, what does that matter? Okay. We're talking about big structural frameworks of oppression that are keeping us exactly where they plan to keep us, because we're keeping ourselves exactly where they need us to keep ourselves so we don't liberate ourselves. Okay, look at this.
and swimming and diving. This is why you see males in
Oh, hold on. I rewound it. Let me go here. This is Skeptic. This is a bullshit channel and a bullshit guy. But it says biology versus gender ideology, the science behind the debate. Look at this.
He's been running on this idea that being a woman has been an adult human female for quite some time. This is how we've structured our society around it, a lot of our laws. This is why we have sex-segregated bathrooms and prisons, et cetera, because we acknowledge that we're a sexually dimorphic species. We have males and females, and then our traits sort of vary among individuals, and there's average differences between males and females. What we have now is sort of a newer ideology that's come along that just wants to flip all of this on its head and just say, this is not what being a man or a woman is. They want to root it more in just the way that you feel about yourself, your so-called gender identity. And this is why you see things like males like Leah Thomas, who are winning the NCAA Division I women's champion in swimming and diving.
Okay, so there's like the transphobic perspective, the conservative perspective, this is called biology versus gender ideology, the science behind the debate. And so now it's going to be a whole like transphobic argumentation about what gender is. But then you switch it to this link was in that chat, that comment section. It's Robert Sapolsky. It's like one of the best Robert Sapolsky clips on the internet. It's Neurobiology of Transsexuality, Professor Robert Sapolsky. You guys know I like Sapolsky. And look at this video.
Okay, well, what about the neurobiology of sexual orientation in women? Vastly smaller literature, far, far less studied. What has been showed so far are only two endpoints. One is the same deal with a fourth to second finger ratio. On the average, gay women have the ratio more typical of straight men than straight women. The other thing that's been shown is the same autoacoustic reflex thingy going on there. Final realm of neurobiology, rather than issues of gay versus straight, what is the neurobiology of transsexuality? And that used to be considered to be purely a domain of psychopathology. If being gay used to be a certifiable psychiatric disorder up until the early 1970s, the American Psychiatric Association, in their textbook, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, you could be psychiatrically certified as ill. A psychiatric disorder was being homosexual or lesbian. And then in what had to have been one of the more all-time blowout committee meetings ever, they decided that, no, actually it's not a psychiatric disorder, and overnight about 40 million Americans were cured of a psychiatric disease. The notion of transsexuality as a psychiatric disorder has had much, much longer shelf life. What's the neurobiology of that? To date, there have been a handful of studies, and they show essentially the same thing. Really, really interesting. Another region of the brain that shows a sex difference in its average size. Don't even worry about the name of this. It's called the bed nucleus of the striae terminalis. It's where the amygdala begins to send its projection into the hypothalamus. Another one to those gender differences. There's one type of neuron in there with a certain type of neurotransmitter where very, very reliably it is about twice the size in males than in females. Sufficiently so that even in human brains you could pretty confidently determine the sex of somebody by seeing the number of these neurons. You'll see I'm not even saying the name of the neurotransmitter. It's irrelevant. It's just another one of those differences, a dimorphism in a region of the brain, a really, really reliable one.
I love the idea, and I want to push it back to this TikTok, the idea that overnight 40,000 people were cured of their illness just because it got written in the book differently. And that's what I mean about everything that we do as human beings. We say, oh, you're trans because you weren't assigned female at birth, or you were assigned male or female, and you disagreed man or woman, whatever. And I'm saying, but if we took away that requirement at birth, if we stopped assigning gender at birth, do trans people disappear? Do cis people disappear? Right? 40 million, sorry, not 40,000, 40 million. But that's the point that I'm trying to make clear to you, is that constructs are real. We create them for meaning. And also, if I just change this over here and this over here, do these things just disappear? But I'm still here. I still exist, right? This is Robert Sapolsky. He's a determinist. I've shown him. I've read his books. I've shown you his videos online. And the idea is like, what is real if I just change this thing here? What is, you know what I'm saying? So the concept of real is important here. So going back to this TikTok.
And no amount of name calling will change that. There are gay men who are bottoms that refuse to date other men who are bottoms. There are gay men who refuse to date feminine presenting gay men. There are transgender women who refuse to date transgender men or bi men. And the LGBTQ community is full of exclusionary dating practices. But the moment a straight woman says she doesn't want to date a man who also likes men, then all hell breaks loose.
All hell broke loose because you guys kept accusing bi men of having AIDS. All hell broke loose because you guys didn't ever give a good reason. P.S. in queer communities, we do absolutely ask each other, like, why aren't you dating that person? Okay, so have you ever thought about internalized homophobia, internalized biphobia, internalized homophobia or transphobia? Like, We do. That's the difference between progressive circles and conservative ones. If you're in gay conservative bubbles, okay, we've been calling out the issues on Grindr for years about how white gay guys say no black guys in their bios. Like, yeah, we've been calling that shit out. So not everyone's going to call it out. Obviously, there are racist gay people, but the rest of us are like, what is that? So the idea that, you know, this is what I'm saying about the world. Like, you have to be careful of the TikTokers you're watching. This has 61,000 likes, this video that I just showed you. We have to be very careful about the people who are seriously trying to make the world a better place and the people that are pretending to care about the world while being reductive as fuck in their analysis. This is reductive as fuck analysis, okay? This in no way, you know, this same rhetoric from her is this rhetoric from this guy. It's the same vibe. It just looks different because one might say they're a feminist and one might not, or one might say they're a womanist and one might not. Like, at the end of the day, we have to take the Robert Sapolsky understanding that just because a book or a definition says you are doesn't mean you are. That's why we have to know that science and research has often been very white supremacist, and we have to start, you know, really holding people in positions of power their feet to the fire about how they decide to diagnose or critique people. Robert F. Kennedy, he made this like statement one time, like ADHD medication is very addictive. Well, maybe to people who aren't ADHD. You know, that's why non-ADHD people take it to study and all that. But to the ADHDers who often forget to take their medication, even though they set 10 alarms, it's hardly addictive as much as it is very helpful when they do remember to take it. Like, and so we're doing this thing where we're looking at a group of people who are having a hard time with XYZ and then deciding that we need to eradicate or change the whole system instead of just catering to those groups of people, instead of just helping that group of people. If you've got a group of people addicted to ADHD medication, why don't you ask why they're addicted? Instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. Now, just a reminder, I want to revisit Judith Butler's positioning on gender because I am a gender deconstructionist. Judith Butler is a gender deconstructionist. Just for context, gender deconstructionists are basically believe that gender is more or less a social experience rather than an inherently biological one, though I would just argue it's always both because we're biological creatures. We can't ascend our biology. But when we say it's biological, it's kind of like, what is a period? Okay, what is a woman? You'll say, oh, what is a woman? A woman is someone who gets a period, but like lots of women don't get periods, cis or otherwise. We'll say, oh, well, what is a period? A period is when you bleed. But like, you know, a period is like you're shedding your lining. And so there's a conversation about like, is the period when you bleed or is it period when, because some people spot or some people bleed and they're not getting their period and they think it's their period. I was watching a medical doctor try to explain the differences because people were confusing. Like, okay, there was a phenomenon that happens where people think when their partners have really rough sex with them. So if you have a partner who has a insertable and they are pounding you very hard against your cervix, that, oh, it brings the period on. You cannot hard sex your way into period. What's actually happening is it's either you are a few days out from your period, but you are bleeding. You are actually just bruising and wounding yourself. And so the misconception is that a period is when you bleed. A period is not when you bleed. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So people are unknowingly cutting themselves open, bleeding internally or externally, I suppose, thinking it's their period, but it's not their period. And they kind of brag about it like, oh, my partner brought my period. And I'm like, that's not what that is. So when we have these conversations, we have to be very careful about what we think something is. Like virginity. They say virginity is like when you bleed. I never bled. Okay. Oh, virginity as itself is a concept created by purity culture and patriarchy anyways. You know? So when we have this conversation, okay, we have to think about what something is. So here's Judith Butler. Just check that. You've probably seen this, but just watch this.
In the 70s and 80s, I was part of a movement of people who were rethinking gender during that time. Queer theory was emerging. It was in a complicated conversation with feminism. Trans issues had not yet surfaced as part of our contemporary reality. So it was a moment in which we asked questions like, what has society made of us and what can we make of ourselves? There were a number of versions of feminism that I tended to oppose. One of them held that, well, women are fundamentally mothers and that maternity is the essence of the feminine. And then a second one thought that feminism was about sexual difference, but the way they defined sexual difference was always presumptively heterosexual. And both of them struck me as wrong. I was pretty committed to the idea that people ought not to be discriminated against on the basis of what they do with their body, who they love or how they move or how they look. All I was saying is that the sex you're assigned at birth and the gender that you are taught to be should not determine how you live your life. Sometimes people point to gender trouble as the inception of gender theory, but people were working on gender before me, Gail Rubin and Juliet Mitchell and Simone de Beauvoir herself. Simone de Beauvoir was an existential philosopher and a feminist philosopher who wrote The Second Sex in the 1940s. The basic point was that one is not born a woman, but rather becomes one, that the body is not a fact. She opened up the possibility of a difference between the sex you're assigned and the sex you become. Gail Rubin was an anthropologist and remains an anthropologist who wrote an extremely influential article called The Traffic in Women. And what she tried to say was that the family was a structure whose task it was to reproduce gender. And one of the aims it had was to kind of keep heterosexuality looking really normal. And although it was part of feminist anthropology at the time, it allowed us to start thinking about gender as something that could be reproduced, crafted, cultivated, and that there were systems, frameworks to which gender belonged. There was one other dimension of Rubin's work, which was, interestingly, psychoanalysis. She basically said, well, maybe there's a whole lot of repression going into becoming a man and a whole lot of repression going into becoming a woman, and that one of the things we have to do is to conform with existing gender norms is to rule out all those possibilities of being, feeling, doing, loving that don't line up with the gender norms that are governing our lives. So anthropology, psychoanalysis, they all had their place in that moment way before gender trouble emerged on the scene.
Ugh, first of all, just like, I love the credit where credit is due. And also, this is why I love people who seriously care about their craft and care about their topic. Guys, I love that there's a place in the world where I can go to TikTok and see random people giving their opinions, but you don't know what you're talking about. And it's so important that we recognize that in all of us. There are not enough books we could read. Guys, I had this epiphany the other day. I've read over thousands of books, and there are so many books I have not read. Popular books too. People will be like, oh, Britt, have you read this really popular book? I was like, I haven't. They're like, wait, how have you read all these books on philosophy, but you haven't read these ones? Because there are thousands of books in the world. We will not have enough time to research all of the information in the world before we die. We have to rely on each other to do the work so we can share what the other has learned. And this is collective thinking versus individual thinking. Like, if I as an individual was responsible for reading all of the information about all of these things, like, we would never solve any of the world's problems because you're going to have to wait for me to do it all. And I don't have the spoons. So we have to rely on each other as a collective. But this is so important when we talk about these topics, why I think it is so serious that people read books. And also just like that counts audiobooks, whatever you need to do to get the information. But documentaries, listen to researchers, realize that we're just at the beginning of really understanding people, right?
I think at the time that I wrote Gender Trouble, people treated gender as if it was a natural fact or a sociological reality, but they didn't treat it as something that you could make and remake. Performance is important to the extent that we do enact who we are. And anybody in performance studies actually knows that there are performances that we do in our lives that are not mere performance, they're not fake. When performative was first coined as a word, the philosopher J.L. Austin was trying to understand legal utterances. So when a judge says, I declare you man and wife, you become man and wife once that declaration has happened. That's not fake. That happened. Now, what if we were to say that in enacting our lives as a particular gender, we are actually realizing that gender anew. We are making something real happen. When gay and lesbian people started coming out, or when trans people started living openly, something changed in the world by appearing, speaking, acting.
Which is why the best form of erasure is literally erasure. You don't exist. Where are you? I never see you. Coming out is not only for you, it's for the world. Kids need to see you existing. You need to see you existing. You need to be that trans person that you never had growing up in the media. You need to be that gay person who never could exist. And this is why the first step to oppression is erasing you from history, erasing you from existence, saying, well, I've never met a gay person, when the reality is you've met a lot of gay people. That's why these bi women that are like, I only date straight men. How many of those men are in the closet because they can't come out? And it's not because of women, it's because of patriarchy. The women who don't want to date bi men, that's learned patriarchy, right? The men who aren't coming out, that's because of homophobia and patriarchy. And also systems of oppression create and erase our existence on purpose because we don't fit into this nuclear family setup, right? So again, like, this is why I love listening to people who dedicate their lives to research, because what they're really researching is the why. And it's not just because, oh, it sounds right, it feels right. It's that clip I showed you earlier of Not So Erudite being asked a question and the guy goes, oh, that sounds about right to me. A lot of things sound right, but are incredibly wrong. Right? Chet says you're giving the world a chance to potentially see itself differently. Exactly. And that potential, that's where I think everything beautiful about existence comes from, because we built off of that. What if we did it different? Like, we're really so sick and tired of the world. The world is such a sick and tired place. But what if we did it different? Like, really different, not just like superficially different. I mean, really different. I had a block come on my channel and say, you know, Brittany, you're so right. I'm paraphrasing, but something like, you're so right. Like, women make fun of me for the way that I date and want to go 50-50 or something like this. But something like, this is why I don't even know if dating women is like, there's a reason to date women, something like this. And I was like, block. It's like all of these angry men who see me countering other feminist thought and saying like, I don't think this is like liberatory. They go, yeah, women suck. That's not, my channel is not a space to give you permission to shit on women. You can't punch down on a majority of people. Like, men in my comment sections talking about who has it harder, men or women. Women, we live under patriarchy. Stop having this conversation. Okay? Like, yes, everybody has it hard. And if we're going to play the comparison game, women have it harder than men. Okay? You guys literally, policy, government, the law, like men don't even know how much privilege they have because they are still suffering under capitalism. They are still suffering from patriarchy, but in a different way. They have no concept of how hard women have it because women also don't talk about it because they've also been told don't play the victim. So when we do stand up for ourselves, we are ostracized. I mean, feminists in general, look at this guy saying, when are feminists going to admit that you're part of the problem? Feminism is a reaction to the problem, which is patriarchy. Okay?
In certain ways, reality changed, and it has changed. We are seeing the changing of terms. We no longer speak about family, woman, man, desire, sex in the same way. Even the Cambridge Dictionary acknowledges that something has changed. Okay, so when we talk about performative, we're talking about an act that makes something come into being or an act that has real consequences. We're talking about the changing reality.
Which is so exciting. Now, this is scary to a lot of people because they're saying, like, I want to know what the most reality is. Well, the cool thing about being people, and I say this all the time, all of civilization was built off of very few facts. Isn't that amazing? Like, we didn't even need to know if things were certain, like a certain thing was real or not, and we built all of civilization. Like God, I don't know if God is real, but they don't need to be for people to have an experience with God. Because the real is your experience, but that's why gender is more real than God, because gender is the experience you're having with self, versus God is a claim that something outside of the self exists, which is not the claim I would make about gender, right? So that's the difference. But yet people can have experiences where they feel like God really exists, you know? So, you know, there's a question there. Chet says, women have it harder. Years ago, I thought it was equal until I did research. There's no comparison. However, does a white woman have it harder than black men? I don't know about that. There's more nuanced question. Well, that's where intersectionality comes in, right? So intersectionality has to come into play when we have these conversations, right? That girl, that Paris girl, she's young. She's a lesbian. she's a black girl and people really hate her. And look, I just think she's young. But she said something like, I'll always pick white women even over black men. Mind you, she's a lesbian. But what I think she means to say, in probably not the clearest way, is that ultimately, if you look at patriarchy and the way that it intersects, that if you have a white woman that's deconstructed, she's going to be safer than a black man who hasn't. But to make the implication that a white woman who hasn't deconstructed is safer than a black man who has is the problem. A white supremacist white woman who's willing to call the police on a black man to see him get killed is obviously a more dangerous person in general. But a man who hasn't deconstructed patriarchy will kill you. A white woman who hasn't deconstructed white supremacy will get a black person killed. And this is why we say, going back to this woman who said, unpack, what do you want me to unpack? I want you to unpack so people stop killing each other. If you do not unpack your biases, you're gonna get killed. Like, men who do not deconstruct patriarchy kill women. They kill people. They kill gay people. They kill trans people. They murder people. They rape people, right? I'm saying if you do not unlearn, you will get somebody killed. White women who do not deconstruct their white supremacist beliefs, they will get people killed. And so, yeah, certain people are safer. Like, I think queer people are the safest people, regardless of gender. If I have a guy in front of me who's a deconstructed queer man, queer, not gay, queer, and I mean queer philosophically, so he can be a gay man who believes in queer theory, he is safer than even my own father. Because at the end of the day, like, it's like a different kind of, it depends on the context of the safer. But the safer is doing a lot of heavy lifting here because it's contextual. So that's why I say, for me, if I made an island of women like Boa, the secret is that men would be there. It just wouldn't be all men or most men. The dilemma is, though, we love people that are bigoted. We have family members and grandparents and uncles and aunties. We love our family. And it's like, okay, does your family get to come? So let's say you make this utopia, this perfect liberated space where all races are welcomed and all people are liberated and there's no bigotry. But you had to leave your family to go to this space. So now you're living here, and then a horrible tragedy happens on the side of the planet where your family is. And your family says, can I please come live with you on your special island? We're all going to die if you don't let me in. Are you going to let them in or not? So then you go, okay, you can come, but you got to be nice. But the thing is they are going to come, and they're going to bring their beliefs with them, and they're going to bring their bigotry with them. And then the place you created that was sacred is now infiltrated by their bigotry. But here's the thing. Let's say you make this utopia, which is a myth of a perfect place. You make this utopia, okay? You get all the bigotry out of it, but then you have a child. And the child starts to question, well, why do we do things this way? Are there other people who don't do things this way? And they learn about the other people on the other side of the world who do things different. And they go, that sounds better for me. And then they go become bigoted over there, right? It doesn't matter. Okay, another part of it. You create this utopia. You have this perfect island with the perfect people on it. So we're all queer, we're all deconstructed, we're all straight, we're deconstructed, we're black, white, brown, whatever. We're deconstructed. We're introspective, we're thoughtful, we're considerate, we're loving, we're all of the good things, because deconstruction isn't enough. It's just a verb or a type of processing. Eventually you get older. And eventually within this utopia, the younger people start to actually come up with new ways to be even more aware. And then the old wise people go, I don't really like that. Actually, when we were younger, this was the point of our liberation. But now you guys are taking it too far. Well, now this utopia bubble that we created is just as shitty as every other bubble that came before us, because now we have grumpy old people and they're still arguing that the younger people are taking it too far. Because wherever you go, there you are. Wherever you go, there you are. And the there that is there is that you are human. You can't escape us. You can't escape who we are. We are completely flawed beings. That, going back to the conversation of today's stream, it doesn't matter how progressive you are today, you could be a conservative in 10 years. And I know that scares you, but I swear to God, if you don't have the wisdom to see that, you're useless as a thinker. Respectfully, fucking great for the time you existed. You're the new J.K. Rowling. Do you know what I'm saying? How do we not see it time and time again? All of these great people, we go, oh, they were such great thinkers. Oh, but did you know they were misogynist? Oh, did you know they were racist? Did you know this? That's you. You're going to be that person if you do not keep working on it. You're going to be great for the time and considered reductive in 10 years. Considered old school, conservative, bigoted. And I'm saying that's why we have to make an effort to really keep unlearning, to really move forward, to keep really advocating for learned. So again, chat. So when we have these conversations, this is why I say, like, I really love this person. I hope they grow, because I'm growing and I don't want to leave people behind. But this is why we unsubscribe from people we've been following, because man, you just see where they're getting stuck. But remember that could be you. Okay. And that's the point. That's the point. Just as their values would be more in line in respecting your dignity as a person than your parents, despite their love for you, assuming they're authentically and suffering, sufficiently deconstructing. Exactly. Like, I think that's why we have chosen family, because sometimes the bio families we're born into, which are so sacred, they also struggle to see us because they're trapped in their bigotry. And it stops them from fully engaging with us in a real way, you know? Okay, so all of this to say, the end of deconstruction is not pansexuality. The end of deconstruction is knowing yourself deeper, better, and loving the world in a better way, in a more whole way. That's the goal of deconstruction, introspection, extrospection. The idea of philosophy is to have a deeper relationship with existence. We're here for a very short time, if only that time was spent having a deeper relationship with ourselves and others.